When I started researching this video, I'd planned to do a breezy little run-through of 3 bite-sized stories about Italian history. I've done it before, and I thought it'd be a great way to start the year. Light, simple, silly, perfect. However, upon diving into the first of 3 topics, why Italian place names sound so goofy in English, I realized I had thoughts and a lot of angles to cover. So instead, welcome to what is functionally the background noise inside my brain whenever I say any place name in my videos. Because when you get a name like Firenze or Venezia, you say it and it makes you feel all classy. Oh, che bella parola, tanto elegante, sono alla moda. But then you bring it down to English and it's Florence and Venice, which is fine, but those aren't the same sounds at all. It's weirdly flat and smushy, which is the phonetic antithesis of what makes Italian sound so nice. Those silent E's on the end make the word feel like you gave up partway through. I mean, listen to how Roma becomes Rome. That one vowel difference robs us of a quarter of the word and half the drama. I wondered how on earth we got from that to this, and my first instinct was to blame French. This, being my first reaction, will obviously be proven correct because I don't know what foreshadowing is, but as a formality, let's do the rest of the video anyway. My logic was that the English names for Italian places look suspiciously similar to the French names. I mean, Rome, Milan, Florence, Venice, they just sound like they belong in French. Surely the ironclad science of vibes would never lead me astray. I've studied French and Italian in school, visited both countries, and I'm familiar with the basic phonology of each language. French is further back in the throat, a little more consonant heavy, emphasis often on the last syllable. Italian, by contrast, has greater focus on open vowel sounds and more melodically varied syllable stress. That said, every language has its own aesthetic and poetic strengths, and French sounds are really pretty on French words. Paris sounds beautiful in its native language in a way the Italian Parigi just doesn't. So at this point in my brainstorming, I thought I had it. All I had to do was establish some context about how foreign names are traded between languages, go back through the history of French, Italian, and English to show how the languages developed, and then simply assume that my gut assessment would remain correct with no further nuance to undermine my flagrant Italian language bias. Am I laying it on thick enough? Let's find out. Allora, cominciamo con la linguistica. Now, the topmost layer of all this is the understanding that almost nobody calls other people what they call themselves in their native language. For a classic example, let's jump back to Italy's classical Roman past and their first interaction with Greece. Famously, not originally called Greece. The people who lived there called their homeland Hellas, or Hellada, and that's an endonym, a name people use for themselves in their own language. However, when the big macho Romans rolled into the southern Italian city of Cumae, the locals said they were colonists from the city of Graia, so the Romans stopped devoting additional brain space to anything other than ass-kicking and blanket categorized everyone like them as Graiki, which became the word Greek. This is an exonym, a name given by outsiders in a foreign language. We're getting a little sidetracked from our stated purpose of Italy's story, but shush, Romans are Italians, get off my back. So the rest of Europe picked up calling them Graiki, and the exonym has stuck all the way to the present, but Hellas has another exonym from the opposite direction. See, from the eastern point of view, the nearest Greeks are in Ionia, so Assyrian and Phoenician records mention Ionia and Yadnana. Then later on, the Achaemenid Persians rolled up and called it Yauna, naming the rest of Greece the same thing. That name later morphed into Yunnan, and that one stuck. So to this day, speakers of Persian, Turkish, Arabic, Hebrew, and Hindi still refer to Greece with some form of Yunnan. Now let's not feel too bad about Greece here, because not only does this happen to everybody, but Greece takes the cake for pejorative exonyms, having literally invented the concept of a barbarian to describe people who weren't them. Okay, now we're getting off track from Italy, so allow me to remedy that rapidamente. That's the most basic form of linguistic name transfer. Some outsider comes around and creates a brand new name based on their experiences and opinions of a place or people, and understanding the context of those words can tell us as much about the speaker as the thing being named. But even within one linguistic lineage, original endonyms can diverge over time and ultimately become an exonym. So to understand the origin of Italian place names, we need to know the origin of Italian. So we're going back to Latin for a sec, because after the empire in the West splintered apart in the 400s AD, the provincial variety of Latin across Europe and North Africa got a lot more pronounced, quite literally, as local flavors of the language evolved in isolation and diverged without the influence of the empire. Meanwhile, medieval Greek was doing just fine because go-go gadget better empire, and because of that political stability, Greek remained remarkably consistent over a very long time in comparison. In any case, Latin's fragmentation gave us the modern Romance family of languages, often grouped as Portuguese, Spanish, French, Italian, and Romanian. Everyone forgets Romanian. Don't forget Romanian. Be better. But it took a very long time before those modern national languages took shape. Spanish got its first grammar book in 1492, right at the end of the Reconquista, and Italy wasn't unified enough to have meaningful use for a standard national language until the late 1800s, and the further step of making everyone actually speak it took another several decades. Hey, wait a minute, is that gonna cause a problem for my stated thesis? No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. But in between the OG Latin and the modern Big Five, there were dozens of medieval Romance languages. Former imperial provinces in the Balkans and North Africa had their own Romance tongues that survived until they were superseded by Germanic, Slavic, and Arabic. Meanwhile, look past the Big Five national languages and there's more than 20 main branches. Iberia was home to Portuguese, Galician, Leonese, Castilian, which became modern Spanish, Aragonese, and Catalan. Then, moving up the Mediterranean coast into France, we run into the southern Occitan, then Arpitan, and the northern Langue d'Oil, which became modern French. Then there's Italy with the absolute highest density of languages. Gallo-Italic in the northwest, Venetian, Rito-Romance, Tuscan, Central Italian, Neapolitan, Sicilian, and Sardinian. And most of those can be divided another 2 or 3 ways if you're feeling thorough. Contrary to how they're sometimes categorized, these are not dialects that have quirky little differences but are otherwise mutually understandable. These are whole-ass languages that evolved independently over more than 1,000 years, with their own influences, vocabulary, grammar constructions, and foundational pieces of literature. This makes sense when considering Italy was many countries for a very long time, all of them fiercely independent. Standard Italian only really became the standard in the 1900s, well after unification, and the tradition of local languages remains so strong to this day that most Italians are considered bilingual in Italian and local. Wait, hold on a second, this is getting kinda complex. This is more pronounced in the far north and south of the country with Venetian and Sicilian especially, but less common in the center of the country near Tuscany. That's because Standard Italian is primarily based on the Tuscan language popularized in literature by Petrarch, Dante, and Machiavelli. Okay, not so much Machiavelli, but he's my guy, so I gotta rep. I say all this to explain that languages are complicated, and this is roughly when it clicked that my beloved lingua italiana is a surprisingly modern development, and is potentially not the final arbiter of what things in Italy are called. See, the gap between Standard Italian and local languages has the fascinating consequence that most Italian place names are exonyms that don't match the local endonyms. Uh-oh! For instance, Naples in Italian is Napoli, but in local Neapolitan, Napele. Palermo is the same in English and Italian. Amazing. No, in Sicilian, it's Palermo. Let's try Genoa. In Italian, that's Genova. In Ligurian, Zena. Great. Mantua in Italian is Mantova, but the Lombard for it is back to Mantua, just like Milano, where the Milanese drops the final vowel to become Milan again. Then Venezia. La mia bella Venezia. Cosa fai? Venisa. Oh no! Oh no! That sure sounds like French and English, and not at all like its standard Italian counterpart. It was at this moment that I realized my premise was shattered. As it turns out, Italian is a wild card too. But my shock at the notion eventually brought me to a more comprehensive understanding of these languages. From there, the question of why English pronounces Italian names like that is ultimately very simple. Early medieval French had exonyms for Italy derived from their Romance kingship and shared roots in Latin. Some turned out rather similar, Venice to Venisa, while others struck more closely to the original Latin, getting Florence from the OG Florentia, while Tuscan went rogue with Firenze. France in turn imported all that to early English by way of the Norman conquest, and each language continued to evolve and diverge over the following millennium, to the point where the French and English place names are not hideously more off base than the surprisingly large gap between Standard Italian and the local languages. Sure, I like the sound of Standard Italian quite well, but I can't pretend it's the only valid option. So to answer my original question, why are Italian names so weird in English? Because translation is tricky. Exonyms are weird in every language, and the Romance gang is one big, vaguely Latinate exonym soup, even in their own countries. None of this is French's fault. Languages are just complicated, and localization is fine. If Venezia becomes Venice in English, cool. It's fine. I'm fine. Just give me a minute. What kind of Venice enthusiast doesn't speak fluent Venetian? God, I'm such a dumbass. Oh, wow, look at me. I love Italy so much. I can't even read Dante in the original Tuscan because I'm such a fake fan. Sure, I can tell the difference between Tuscan and Standard Italian on sight, but what's the point if I can't read it fluently? Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. God.